welcome everyone. Welcome to the next webinar from SQL Maestros. My name is Amit Bansal and I'm going to be your host and speaker. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you have joined from. This webinar, this 1 hour session is on SQL Server weight types. Let's cause one, diagnose it, and fix it. This is going to be very practical. So I just have 4 slides. Before we begin, quick answers to your questions, your ready questions that are always there in each webinar. Question number 1, is this session going to be recorded? Yes, it's going to be recorded, and you will get access to the recordings, which is by next week. Once we process the recording and we upload it, it's going to be available. Now, this is probably the 5th or 6th webinar. And in case you don't know, we record all our webinars and they are available as free courses. They're available as free courses on SQLmaestros.com. So all you have to do is just kind of subscribe to that course. It gives you lifetime access and it is free, which means $0.0 is what you pay to subscribe to that course. And as we keep doing more and more webinars, you will have more and more free content available. Of course, you want to know where the URL is. So a lot of URLs out there, but look at the first one, the first URL out there, what I've just put down in the chat window, the first one, SQLmaestros.com/video courses. So there will be about 3 paid video courses on top. You can ignore that and just scroll down and you'll get a bunch of them. So I would recommend that you copy paste all these URLs that are there in the chat window somewhere in your notepad or OneNote or wherever you save URLs. You can keep them there and you can subscribe to all of this later, not now. Let's focus on the webinar. Answer to question number 2, Q&A. Please do not use the chat window for Q&A for your questions. Please use the Q&A panel. It just gets easier for me to track questions and I will continue to answer it. Once the webinar is over, I mean, when we hit on top of the hour, I just can't continue endlessly. So if there are pending questions, I will take them up on LinkedIn. So at the end of the session, I will put down a LinkedIn URL where you could give some feedback and you can ask questions too. So this is how we do stuff. Well, so we are all set and let's see. Good. Right now, there are no questions. And just to let everyone know, we are just touching about 200 attendees for this webinar. Looks like this topic is popular. Even the previous ones on indexes were very popular and very well attended. So thank you so much for joining. Hope this session is worth your time. Without any further delay, let's begin. SQL Server weight types. Let's cause one, diagnose it, and fix it. So what are your takeaways from this session? In this session, we'll quickly have an introduction to what weight types are. This is a huge concept and can go very deep. And there are so many different weight types to talk about. But in 60 minutes, what can I give you? I can quickly tell you what it is, what SQL Server does with weight types and the weights data, how it can help you, how you can use weights data to kind of figure out what's going wrong in SQL Server overall, or what's going wrong with a specific query or workload. And then we are going to see a very practical example where we are going to purposely cause a weight type. We'll simulate something which will trigger weight type. And then we are going to kind of diagnose it and we are going to fix it. After fixing it, we'll run the same workload again and we'll kind of see that whether the same weight type is being triggered or not. This is what we are going to do. And I can see again questions coming in the chat window. Please don't do that. Please use the Q&A panel for questions. Okay, so let's start. First thing, you need to understand what is your query doing. So when you submit a select statement to SQL Server, your query, hopefully, and as you would expect, is running. That's the running status of the query. Or it is waiting. That's the second state of the query. Now, in simple word, running and waiting is what I would love to have, but there are a few more states of your task or your thread or your session. Now, when I say task or session or thread, technically speaking, these 3 are 3 different things. They're not the same. But generally, like from a level 200 perspective, let's call this as one thing. So either your workload, your query, it's running or it is waiting. Running means it's doing the job. Whatever you have asked SQL Server to do via your query, it's doing that. which is fetching the data, doing the computation, doing your relational mathematics or whatnot. Waiting is when your query waits on resources, which is like waiting for a data page, IO to fetch a data page, waiting for some memory grant, waiting for some CPU cycles, or waiting for the client to respond, anything. This is what we call as waiting. And when your query is waiting, one or more wait types are going to trigger. SQL Server is going to classify that because every wait has a specific wait type. Now think about like when you when you are going to your office, for example, or your workplace, you're waiting for the elevator, you are waiting for the cab, or you are waiting when you reach office and you want to have that morning cup of coffee, you are waiting in the queue for the vending machine. And even when your turn comes up to the vending machine, you're waiting for the cup to be filled up. Each of these waits are different wait types. And this is exactly how it happens inside SQL Server also. So your query is either running or waiting. But then there are more states, as I talked about, runnable. Now, what happens is, let's say your query was waiting on some resource and it gets access to that resource and is ready to run, but it needs its turn on the CPU. Now, in real SQL Server world, you know that hundreds and thousands of users connect to SQL Server, but your SQL Server has a limited amount of processors. Let's say your SQL Server has 32 procs or 64 procs, but hundreds and thousands of users are connected. So they all can't run at the same time because at any given point of time, only one thread can run on a processor. So they wait for their turn and they wait in a runnable queue. And that is that state, which we call as runnable, which is they have everything that they need, but they have just not got their turn. And then another state is like the session sleeping state, which is like it's waiting for a command from the client and it's just not doing anything. But the session is active. Let's say the transaction is active, but is waiting for an input. That's the sleeping state. So for us right now here for today's session, for today's demo, what is important is running or waiting. If you have questions, keep putting them in the Q&A panel. I'll take a logical break and then answer the questions. Okay, now let's quickly discuss the SQL Server execution and see a few waits on the screen. Now look at this very basic tabular example. I've taken this from Microsoft SQL Server white papers. So if you look at this, now assume that this is a processor, right? Like a virtual proc, and you have SPID 60, which is SQL Server session ID 60 that is running. As I said, you can have only one thread running at a time. So SPID 60 is running. And you can see all of these SPIDs below it, 51, 64, 87, 52, etc. They are in the queue. They're in that order, which is like first in, first out. And they have everything that they need. They're ready to run, but they will just wait for their turn. When they get their turn on the CPU, they will start running. So right now, their state is runnable. And then you have the other ones who are in the waiter list. So you can see SPID 73, 59, 56. They're waiting on some or the other resource. Now, what they are waiting for is classified by the wait type. So you can see a few names, few wait types there, like LCKMS, Network IO, CX Packet, Resource Semaphore, so on and so forth. So these are the different wait types. Now, this is like the current snapshot of the processor, let's say. And if you jump over, like immediately after a second or so, things might change. And you can see SPID 60 that was running suddenly encounters a wait. Let's say it was waiting for something on IO and it encounters a wait type, which is like IO completion. So it goes into the waiter list. Now the proc is empty, right? The proc is free. Proc is like, okay, which is the next SPID? I'm free and I can run something. So in the runnable queue here, SPID 51 is right at the top. So 51 will get its turn on the CPU. And while all this is happening, from the waiter list, if you see SPID 56, which was waiting on CX Packet, now its wait is over, which means whatever it was waiting for, it has got access to that resource and it goes and queues up in the runnable queue. So it's right at the end of the queue, SPID 56. So you see how this is changing. So what's the final state now? Which is this, 51 is running, SPID 60 is waiting here, and 56 is in the runnable queue at the end of the queue. This is happening like every millisecond, kind of every millisecond. Things are just changing so fast. And this is a kind of a illustration of a single proc. So let's say if your box has more than 100 CPUs, let's say 192 CPUs, a highly powered machine, this is happening for each virtual proc out there. Okay, I hope these things are clear. Now, inside SQL Server, when these threads, these sessions are encountering these different wait types, friends, there are more than 1,000 different wait types. Of course, it depends on which version of SQL Server you are running. But if you talk about the latest versions like SQL Server 2019 or 2022, you have more than 1,000 wait types. But if you go all the way back to SQL Server 2012 or even before, there may be 700, 800 different wait types. These are all different wait classes. So whenever your thread session is encountering a wait type, SQL Server is recording that information. Where? Here are a few examples, okay? You have a dynamic management view, which is DMOS wait stats. At any given point in time, you can get cumulative aggregated instance-wide wait statistics data, which is, it's not session specific, it is not thread specific, it is not query specific or workload specific. It's like combined what is going on in the instance. Then you have a real-time DMV, which is called as DimOS waiting tasks. If you say select start from this DMV, DimOS waiting tasks, and as the name says, right now, the moment you execute it, you get a list of all the threads and what they are waiting for. And it is real time. So it can just change like every millisecond. So you execute now and immediately a second later, if you execute it again, the snapshot might completely change because it is real time. And that's why I have that smoke animation, volatile, real time, continues to change. Then you have another one, sysdm exec session wait. This was added in some of the some recent version of SQL Server, maybe SQL Server 2016. Yeah, it's useful to some extent. It gives you session related wait. So let's say you have a session 56. So it kind of gives you the overall wait information, wait stats for that specific session. So sometimes it is useful. And again, it's volatile. What else you have? Yes, you can also get wait information from execution plan properties window. So you could just select the select operator from the execution plan. I mean, select and right click, go to properties, and in the properties window, you can get the wait stats information for that specific query. This is good. This is really good because, you know, when you're doing query tuning, you are quite regularly, and you often go and look into the execution plan. And right there, if you get to know, oh, what did my query wait on? It gives you a list of all the different wait types that it encountered. So it helps a lot. Okay, so, and yeah, and then you can manually also capture wait information based on different events happening inside SQL Server. And for that, you can use extended events. It's a very, very powerful framework. All of you know extended events, I suppose. If not extended events, you at least know the tracing mechanism, right? The profiler and all of that. So extended events is, of course, the next generation thing. And you have an event there, wait info, which you can use to capture that information. We are not doing this today, but yeah, some of these are the things that you got to know. Now comes a very important thing here, which I'm going to show you today. In real world, when you have all these DMVs and you're working with wait information, so many things are volatile here, as you can see, and so many things are so aggregated. Cumulative. So sometimes they are not very helpful because you are drilling down to specific workloads and queries, and you want to do your own mathematics, and you want to have your own snapshots at different times, peak period, non-peak period, business hours, so on and so forth. So you want to play around with this data. And dynamic management view data, as you know, does not persist on system restarts and whatnot. So it is always good to have a baseline database where you're capturing this information and you put it into the baseline database. Not too much of data, but something that you might need, like maybe a month's data or something. And then you can use this baseline data to kind of do troubleshooting. So we are going to see we are going to see this baseline database today and a few scripts that I've used. I stole it from our health check service department. And I thought, okay, I want to use some of this for today's webinar. And they said, okay, go ahead, do it. And we are here. Now that you have a very quick overview of what weight types are and how does it work, this was a very, very high level introduction and overview. Now that you know it, you decide what your requirement is. Now, what I mean by this is, what are you trying to troubleshoot? What are you trying to tune? What are you trying to optimize? Option one, are you looking at the overall server, overall instance? Are you troubleshooting general SQL Server slowness? SQL Server is suddenly running slow and you want to figure out what's going on. Is that the approach that you are taking? Or you are tuning a specific query, a specific workload? It's very important because the troubleshooting methodology changes based on what you are trying to achieve. And weight information, weight statistics data, whichever way you capture it and you store it, can help you achieve both of it. But it's just that the paths are different. So in today's webinar, today's session, today's demos, we are going to look at the right one, the second one, which is tuning a specific query, a specific workload. This is what we are going to do. Okay, friends, thank you for your time. No. I mean, thank you for your time on the slide. Okay, so now we are going to jump into demo. We are done with the slides. Okay, that was just a quick introduction. I didn't want to do the slides, but yeah, some of those diagrams and illustrations are sometimes very helpful to get the concepts around. Okay, so let me share the desktop. Okay, friends, hope you were enjoying the session. And can some of you please confirm if you can see the screen? I hope so. Management Studio, some code is up there. Okay, cool. All good. Yeah. Fine. I've got the answers. Very good. Now, let's get started. I have a few scripts that are already open, and I'll tell you this demo is very, very practical. I tested the demo today afternoon, so I'm hopeful that everything that I want to show you today will work, but it's a tricky demo because there are a lot of pieces to this demo that I've put together. So I'll give it my best shot and I hope things work, but in case it doesn't work, I'll still get the concepts around to you. Now, first, okay, there is a database here, AdventureWorks 2016. Let's keep things very, very simple. Okay, I'm going to execute this query that we have here. Okay, now it's not important, friends, right now for us what this query is and what's the business purpose, what kind of data it's getting. All that is not important. What is important for us right now here is that there is a workload that is given to us. And this query is running slow. It's consuming a lot of memory. There are problems with this query, let's say. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this query. And this query is going to take time. If I am not wrong, this query might take something around 3 to 4 minutes. So what I will do is, before I go and show you the other scripts, the so-called baseline database scripts, etc., let's run this query. That's the first thing we are going to do. I will run the query and then I will move over to this set of scripts here. And I am going to show you sysdm OS waiting tasks. And I'm going to filter on wait type resource semaphore. Now, you might be thinking, oh, Amit is just making it very simple, right? Because he knows what he's doing. He's running a query and he knows that it's going to wait on resource semaphore wait type. So he's just kind of doing it in a very, very simple way. You are not wrong. You are right, because this is an engineered demo. But the reason why I'm running the query and I'm showing you this waiting task beforehand, because while the query is running and it's taking 3 to 4 minutes, I want to show you practical data that yes, my threads were waiting on resource semaphore. So, but In real world, you would not know that, oh, what is the query really waiting on? And that is what we are going to troubleshoot via our collected health statistics, via the collected weight statistics. That will come in later. But because we want to learn, that's the reason why I'm kind of jumping the gun and trying to show you a few things ahead. So what we will do right now is let's go and execute this workload. We are running it right now. Okay, let me stop this. Sorry, include actual execution plan. I want to do that because I want to show you the plan also. Let's go and run it. Now, this query is running. It might take a few minutes, about 3 to 4 minutes. Now, let's go to our wait type. Now, if you see dim OS waiting task, this is going to show me real-time information, right? I'm filtering on resource semaphore. Is anything waiting on resource semaphore here? Let's go and execute. No, there is nothing waiting on resource semaphore. If I copy this here, paste, and I say where session ID is equal to, that is 87, the one that is running. This is the query that is running, 87. Let's go and see and execute. What do you see? You see a lot of CX packet happening right now, correct? A lot of CX packet happening right now, but there is no resource semaphore. So my query is the threads, because the query is running in parallel. You can see session ID 87. They're waiting a lot on CX packet, but not really resource semaphore, nothing at all. Okay, point number one. Note that the query is still running. As I said, it might take about 3 to 4 minutes. And it continues to run. I'm kind of real-time monitoring. Okay, let's go back. Now, what we have done is there is a baseline database here, which has been pre-created. I just want to show that to you because I showed that to you on the slide. Here is the baseline database. This baseline database has a few tables, which has weight statistics data. And what I have done is as part of our health check work, we have a few scripts where we collect the weight statistics data, and then we do a lot of aggregation and mathematics on it, and then we can get the desired output. So the first one here talks about collecting the weight stats data. This procedure will collect a snapshot of the current weight stats data and put it into a table called DBO weights. Now, just kind of trying to understand the framework. There is a table here called DBO weights. Let's go and execute this. You can see that it has information about all the weight types, when was this snapshot collected, and the collection ID. So right now, you can see that there are 107 rows here, which is like the total number of weight types, 1070. And I have only one collection ID. So let me scroll right at the end, and you can see I just have one collection ID, which is only one snapshot. And I did it before we started off the webinar, because if I would do all of this, 1 hour will go away.